仮面ライド電王
Rider Belt Week Day 2, and now we are moving on to something of a little bit more controversial nature as we venture into the world of Den-O. This one is tricky because you either love this show or you absolutely hate it. Or you think it's okay. Regardless of what you think, I'm here to judge the toy, not the show, so let's leave those opinions outside and focus on the piece of plastic before us. Now, before we begin, you will note that mine is second-hand, so it does have some paint wear, especially on the chrome sections here, so you'll excuse some scratches and marks here and there. For the most part, we're looking at detail for this segment, so, well, I have to admit, it's really simple compared to Keyvat from yesterday. A lot less going on here. Not that that's a bad thing. It's good to keep it simple sometimes, especially when you're working with a gimmick that's interesting for the times. Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. We'll move on to actual up-close detailing. I had to show you this in the light, because the chrome is a little bit worn out. But you can see the Den-O logo forming between the chrome pieces and the light behind them. Very nice touch there. I actually quite like that it's so prominent. Over here, we have terminal buttons, one for each form, and a caution symbol, for some reason. Over here, we have an arrow, to remind you where the light is. I don't know. And we have another arrow. Okay, this one I actually do know. It's because this is the side that unclasps. Yep, it's a version 2 belt, so only one side comes undone. Speaking of the belt itself, I want you to pay attention over here. Here is the molding for this strap of the belt. You can see the kind of a railroad track pattern there. The raised sections having a bit of a rough texture to them. Keep that in mind for later. There's another detail that I have to show you from the top. Hang on. The top angle will tell you that this is a Den-O system. Repetitive a little bit, don't you think? Now, I do like the belt despite its simple nature. I mean, it's using plenty of the Bandai silver I like, and it does give a nice, efficient design feel to it. So, yeah, no real complaints, though, yeah, if you are detail-minded, it might get a little boring to look at. What's a little less boring to look at would be this. The Rider Pass, our official accessory for this belt. Yes, we all know what this is if we've seen the show. You can see a lot of little fake circuitry patterns on a card that's behind a clear sheet of plastic forming this piece. And again, you can see, there's some paint wear on here. You'll excuse it. I actually kind of like this. A little bit of fake circuitry just gives me that kind of, I don't know, scratch-built feel to it. Even though it shouldn't, I guess. But, no, screw it. I like how it looks. On the other side, clear slot. Well, we know what this is for. It's for one of these. This is a Den-O ticket. As you can see, this one is blank, and it is very, very glittery. It looks like confetti going across my screen. You can see there are little details there, a lot of little markings and such that are very hard to read because they're in Japanese, they're on metallic foil, and there's little glittery things everywhere. On the back, a lot of gibberish. Doesn't actually have any meaning. So, just like in the show, you can slide this in like so. There's an empty slot down here. Slide it in. And we are ready to travel back in time to chase after Imagine. If you want to take it out, you have to push it through this little slot that's left in the window. It's a little bit tricky to do, though. If the card gets worn out and it might smoothen up a little bit, it'd be impossible to get out. Now, I will also flip this over so you can see it does open up. On the back, we have the Den-O logo again, very plain, very solid, and we have the logo, we have the card, the ticket rather, shining through on the other side. Now, it closes shut this direction, and it really doesn't matter which way you have this when we get to scanning it. Yes, for those who are unaware, the Den-O belt is essentially a scanner. When we turn it on, big light in the middle shines on, and we are ready to use the buttons on the side. I guess the natural place to start is the main form, sword form, with the red button. loud. Okay, I'm going to pass this over the scanner to activate. Wow, that has got some volume to it. Now, it's a neat little gimmick. The two don't actually make any physical contact, though I do find the results vary depending on which face and which way it's been flipped and closed together. So, mileage may vary. Whichever side you find preference on might work better or worse than others. However, the interesting thing about this gimmick, you've seen it before, or at least if you've seen my YouTube channel, you've seen it before. Ooh, cookies. Oh. There we go. And it's this. Yeah, this is the same gimmick as the core medals from O's. The only difference is the scanner is now on the belt, and the chip that the scanner reads is actually in this. It basically works in reverse from this gimmick, but is the same thing. When it says activated, it sends out a signal. It's looking for a chip inside this. When it finds it, it responds, exactly like the medals do. I find that interesting to see that the gimmick was actually lifted from a previous belt. And guess what? Do you know what else was lifted? The belt strap. Yeah, even the belt strap was reused, and you'll never guess which belt reused it. Decades. Okay, everyone, say it with me now. 1, 2, 3. Honore decado. Okay, we got that out of the way. Was Den-O really such a cash cow that even the parts and gimmicks from its toys bared reuse? Let's go through the other forms. Next, rod form. Same sound effect every time, at least there at the end. Don't you find it irritating how I have to cover up the light? I don't know if you can catch it, but this does light up when you pass the writer pass over it. So, yeah, you'll just have to imagine it if it's getting in the way a little bit. Clearly, they did not have video reviewing in mind in 2007. Next up, axe form. I love how many little reflective pieces are inside there to spread out the light as much as it can. Now, finally, gun form. My favorite. Now, in person, the light on the effect on that isn't quite as impressive because they mix the red and blue lights in order to create it. So it's a little bit shoddy unless you're looking at it straight on. Other than that, yeah, I still think that's the coolest sounding one. Now there is one other trick to this belt, though getting it on camera is a little bit trickier. In order to do it, I have to hold the pass up to the light for a few seconds, which means you won't be able to see what it's doing. So instead, let me see if I can't do this. I'm going to turn it this way, get a 45-degree angle, and I'm now going to try it, and hopefully this will catch on camera. There we go. What it's doing is sending out another signal for the chip to read, though instead of a constant signal like during the Henshin, it's intermediate. So it's only coming out once in a while, which means there's a bit of a delay between you holding it up to the light and another delay for the final activation. Because if I do this, nothing happens. It's waiting for it to stay there long enough for both sound effects to play, which is a little annoying because if you're playing with it, yeah, it still makes it a little bit hard to see. Now, I can demonstrate it for the other forms, but in reality, it does the exact same thing with a different light. This is where I really wish it had a little bit of action sound effect to it. I mean, that really does call for something to come after those lights and sound sequences, doesn't it? It feels like it stops short, unfortunately. There's no charging up noise, there's no big bang, or you can't hear the attack happening. And, by the way, it doesn't help if you have the Dengasher. It doesn't really make the appropriate sounds either. That is it. I mean, this is a very simple belt compared to Keyvat that followed it. And really, this was the final really simple belt they released. They've all been exceptionally complicated and involved since then. So really, this is the last of a dying era in rider belts. Unfortunately, the aftermarket price is just too much to pay for a belt like this. It really doesn't do enough to warrant that. And while the Rider Pass gimmick is neat, these days it has been surpassed in enormous ways by the O's driver. And really the only way you can enhance it and get extra sound effects out of it is to get the Kitaros phone, which I don't actually own, so it's a little hard to demonstrate. So we are left with this, a simple belt from a simpler age. I would recommend it for the hardcore Den-O fan, but if you're just after miscellaneous rider belts, there are better options out there for you. Maybe one you will see later this week, because we've still got 5 to go. More toys, more lights and sounds, and more making everyone go deaf and my microphone go nuts with incredibly loud sound effects. All this and more coming soon. Stay tuned.